Gopi Janavallabha Shri Varadari Jai Gopi Janavallabha Shri Varadari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Shri Radha Giridhari Ke Jam Prabhat Paramahamsa Sudhaja Hari Ashtotar Jatanga Swami Prabhupada Ke Dhanitili Pradishtam Prabhat Paramahamsa Shri Kumar Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Swami Prabhupada Ke Anand Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ke Prantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ke Jai Jai Sitanath Patai Gaura Premanandi All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Om Vishnu Daya Krishna Daya Bhutale Srimati Shri Ram Swami Om Vishnu Daya Krishna Daya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya. So I'll read from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. This is chapter entitled Jansi, the League of Devotees. In his room in the Radha Memorial, Abai would rise daily at 4 a.m. and arouse his young neighbor, Prabhakar Mishra. From 4 to 5, Abai would write. At 5, he would walk in the Antya Tal area. At 5:30, bathe and then chant Hare Krishna on his beads until 7, when he would hold a class on the Chaitanya Charitamrita or Srimad Bhagavatam. Although Prabhakar Mishra was usually the only listener, Prabhupada giving class to you, single class, our personality, Prabhakar Mishra. At 8, he would return to his literary work, typing until after 10, when he would begin to prepare a meal. In the afternoon, he would often go around Jhansi, meeting people and preaching, looking for anyone willing to take part in the League of Devotees. In the early evening, he would write until 7, then he would prepare for the kirtan and lecture he would hold at one of the various places in the city, depending on where he was invited. Although Abai had no money for continuing back to Godhead, a well-established part of his preaching was to write essays, regardless of whether they were to be immediately published or not. He wrote a long essay, some 24,000 words, entitled Message of Godhead. He also wrote a series of chapters propounding the teachings of Bhagavad Gita, especially as they apply to world problems, and Science of Devotion, a summary study of Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so forget the name of this book, but there's a book of Srila Prabhupada's that's a compilation of essays that he wrote prior to coming to the West. I've forgotten the title of that book. Anyway, it's there, and it's a really amazing book. And the essays are beautiful. And just rereading there in Leelamrita, then probably those essays came from that time. Sounds like he was writing essays there. Also, it mentioned that he was writing Science of Devotion, summary of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. So I don't know, but I'm thinking that that would have been the beginnings of his writing of Nectar of Devotion, which is the science of devotional service. So amazing to hear how Srila Prabhupada's determination and commitment to following the instructions of his spiritual master that were consistent throughout his whole life. And then at a certain point, everything kind of exploded in terms of Krishna consciousness expanding and spreading all over the world. It's just amazing. Amazing personality. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. This is Canto 4, Chapter 21, entitled Instructions by Maharaj Prithu. Maha-Kalam. Sorry. Put it here. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I have this nice prayer book. Published by Gopalji Publications, Madhavananda Prabhu. And these are prayers that His Holiness Srila Gaur Govinda Swami Maharaj would recite before speaking on Bhagavatam. It's very beautiful verses. There's quite a few here. And then there is a section from Sri Krishna Leela Stava, which is book by Sanatana Goswami. Gopi Purandana Prabhu has translated and written commentary on that. And in that book is a section of 5 verses glorifying Bhagavatam. So they're very beautiful. You can just read them and hear the translations to increase our greed to appreciate and hear Bhagavatam. So this is Sri Krishna Leela Stava, texts 412 through 416. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyush Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnatya Sarva Lokai Drikprada Sarva Bhagavat Ram Srimad Bhagavata Prabhu Kali Dwanto Aditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O nectar churned from the ocean of all Vedic scriptures. You are the most prominent transcendental fruit of the Vedas and are enriched with the jewels of all philosophical conclusions. You grant spiritual vision to all people of the world and are the very life breath of the Vaishnava devotees. O Lord, you are the sun which has risen to dispel the darkness of Kali Yuga. Actually, you are Lord Krishna, who has returned among us. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshya Yaksharayate Sarvada Seva Savyaya Shri Krishnaya Namostume. O Srimad Bhagavatam, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. By your recitation, one attains transcendental bliss, because your syllables shower down pure love of God. You are to be served by everyone, always, for you are an incarnation of Lord Krishna. Mareka Bando Matsangin, Madguru, Man Mahadana, Man Nishtaraka Madbhagya, Madananda Namostute. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O my only friend, my companion, and my teacher, O my great wealth and deliverer, O my good fortune and bliss, I offer respectful obeisances unto you. A sadhu, sadhutadayin, ati, nicho, chatakara, na ana, muncha, kada chinmam, remna hrit katayo skura. O Srimad Bhagavatam, O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O uplifter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Accompanied by pure love of Krishna, please manifest yourself in my heart and throat. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So this is text number 30. Please repeat. Dohitra din ritem rityo Shocyan dharma vimohitam Varga swarga pavaganam Prayenai katmya hetuna. Dohitra din ritem rityo Shocyan dharma vimohitam Varga swarga pavaganam Prayenai katmya hetuna. Dohitradin ritem rityo Shocyan dharma vimohitam Vargasvaga pavaganam Rayenai hetuna. Rityo Shocyan dharma vimohitam Vargasvaga Rayenai hetuna. Dohitradin ritem rityo Shocyan dharma vimohitam Vargasvaga Hetuna. Missionaries? Please repeat. Dohitradin, grandsons like my father, Bena. Vite, except Mrityaho, of personified death. Shochan, abominable. Dharma Vamohitan, bewildered on the path of religion. Varga, religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Swarga, elevation to the heavenly planets. Apavarganam, being freed from material contamination. Prayena, almost always. Eka, one. Atmya, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Etuna, on account of. Translation. Although abominable persons like my father, Vena, the grandson of death personified, are bewildered on the path of religion, all the great personalities, like those mentioned, agree that in this world, the only bestower of the benedictions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, liberation, or elevation to the heavenly planets is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport. King Vena, the father of Prithu Maharaj, was condemned by the Brahmanas and saintly persons because of his denying the existence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and rejecting the method of satisfying him by performance of Vedic sacrifice. In other words, he was an atheist who did not believe in the existence of God and had consequently stopped all Vedic ritualistic ceremonies in his kingdom. Prithu Maharaj considered King Vena's character abominable because Vena was foolish regarding the execution of religious performances. Atheists are of the opinion that there is no need to accept the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead to be successful in religion, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation. According to them, dharma, or religious principles, are meant to establish an imaginary God, to encourage one to become moral, honest, and just so that the social orders may be maintained in peace and tranquility. Furthermore, they say that actually there is no need to accept God for this purpose, for if one follows the principles of morality and honesty, that is sufficient. Similarly, if one makes nice plans and works very hard for economic development, automatically the result of economic development will come. Similarly, sense gratification also does not depend on the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For if one earns enough money by any process, one will have sufficient opportunity for sense gratification. Insofar as liberation is concerned, they say that there is no need to talk of liberation because after death, everything is finished. Prithu Maharaj, however, did not accept the authority of such atheists, headed by his father, who was the grandson of death personified. Generally, a daughter inherits the qualities of her father, and a son gets the qualities of his mother. Thus, Mrityu's daughter, Sunita, got all the qualities of her father, and Vena inherited qualities of his mother. A person who is always subjected to the rules and regulations of repeated birth and death cannot accommodate anything beyond materialistic ideas. Since King Vena was such a man, he did not believe in the existence of God. Modern civilization agrees with the principles of King Vena, but factually, if we scrutinizingly study all the conditions of religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation, we must accept the principles of the authority of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. According to Vedic literature, religion consists only of the codes of law given by God. If one does not accept the authority of the Supreme Godhead in matters of religion and morality, one must explain why two persons of the same moral standard achieve different results. And it is generally found that even if two men have the same moral standards of ethics, honesty, and morality, their positions are still not the same. Similarly, in economic development, it is seen that if two men work hard day and night, still the results are not the same. One person may enjoy great opulence even without working, whereas another person, although working very hard, does not even get 2 sufficient meals a day. Similarly, in the matter of sense gratification, sometimes one who has sufficient food is still not happy in his family affairs, or sometimes is not even married, whereas another person, even though not economically well off, has the greatest opportunity for sense gratification. Even an animal, like a hog or a dog, may have greater opportunities for sense gratification than a human being. Aside from liberation, even if we consider only the preliminary necessities of life, dharma, artha, and kama, religion, economic development, and sense gratification, we will see they are not the same for everyone. Therefore, it must be accepted that there is someone who determines the different standards. In conclusion, not only for liberation must one depend on the Lord, but even for ordinary necessities in this material world. Prithu Maharaj therefore indicated that in spite of having rich parents, children are sometimes not happy. Similarly, in spite of valuable medicine administered by a competent physician, sometimes a patient dies. Or, in spite of having a safe boat, sometimes a man drowns. We may thus struggle to counteract impediments offered by material nature, but our attempts cannot be successful unless we are favored by the Supreme Personality of God. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Panchakalpa Turubhyascha Vipa Sindho Vaevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay, so here Ritu Maharaj is speaking to the citizens, and he is addressing them um, in a very civilized and knowledgeable and cultured way. Um, he is in the supreme leadership role on the planet as the emperor. He possesses the greatest capacity to rule because he is specifically empowered by Krishna with Krishna's administrative Shakti. He's a Shakti avatar of Krishna's Shakti of administration. So in terms of doing the job, there's no one better. Yet he understands his position in the greater scheme of things. And it's interesting in the previous verses how he expresses his recognition of the interdependence between him as the leader and his praja, the citizens. And that actually for him to be successful in his role, he also needs them just as much as they need him. So there is an interdependence. And he is encouraging them in his capacity as the leader to perform their religious duties. It's also interesting to note how he pitches his presentation. He speaks to the highest grade of living entities present. He speaks to the Vaishnavas because Bhagavad Dharma, Vaishnav Dharma, is Paro Dharma, it's the highest Dharma. It is the essence of all spiritual instruction, it's the essence of all religion. And the purposes of all Dharma are fulfilled through bhakti. Bhakti is the purpose of Dharma. Dharma leads to bhakti. Dharma can support bhakti, but bhakti is not dependent on any way on Dharma. In fact, it's the elements of bhakti in Dharma that give Dharma its efficacy. Without bhakti, Dharma doesn't work. Why? Because everything is dependent on Krishna. Because there is nothing but Krishna. Everything is a manifestation of Krishna and his Shaktis. And life is in service to Krishna. Dharma is a process by which living entities, conditioned souls, disconnected from reality, can gradually reconnect with Krishna, incrementally increasing their adhikar to appreciate bhakti. At the point in the living entity's sojourn in material existence, when bhakti becomes appreciated, Dharma has fulfilled its purpose. Still, devotees engage in Dharma to set the example, and because it's Krishna's system of eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. Everyone is forced to do it anyway. So do it according to Krishna's system. In that way, it won't obstruct the cultivation of bhakti. It won't get in the way of bhakti. Jiva Goswami goes as far to say, as one who engages in sadhana of hearing, chanting, remembering, for a set period in their, generally Vaishnavas, like we saw in the example of Srila Prabhupada, engage in sadhana in the mornings, and then they do their activities in the day, and then the next morning they do their sadhana again. Jiva Goswami says that one who is regulated in their hearing and chanting and is conducting their eating, sleeping, and mating and defending according to the laws of Dharma, they're considered to be always engaged in hearing and chanting, even though they're not always doing hearing and chanting. It's considered to be always doing, hearing and chanting, because it is eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, which is not obstructing hearing and chanting. So it does not obstruct the cultivation of bhakti. It does not obstruct the cultivation of relationship with Krishna. But when those activities are not conducted according to Krishna's laws, then they do obstruct. And that dharma is not the goal of Shastra. It's not the point. Those things that support Krishna consciousness are not Krishna consciousness. Krishna consciousness is Krishna consciousness. Those things that support Krishna consciousness are those things that support it. Krishna consciousness is fed by the primary angas of bhakti: hearing, chanting, remembering Krishna. Those are the Swarup Anga Bhakti. They are the primary limbs of bhakti that feed Krishna consciousness. When you chant Hare Krishna, your consciousness is connected to Krishna in the form of Krishna's name, the most merciful form of Krishna. So you are in Krishna consciousness when you chant Krishna's name, because you, the Atma, the awareness, the individual eternal living being, is connected with Krishna. When you cultivate the angas of bhakti, you're directly connecting with Krishna through bhakti. Bhakti is non-different from Krishna. Bhakti is Krishna's Swarup. It is a manifestation of Krishna's Swarup Shakti. The pleasure potency, Ladini Shakti, Samvit Shakti, the cognitions, knowledge, tattva, these comprise bhakti. These two things are the components of bhakti. They are bhakti. They're non-different from Krishna. Bhakti is non-different from Krishna. Simultaneously one and different. But it's Krishna's Swarup Shakti. It's not separate from Krishna. Bhakti is eternal. So when one engages in the limbs of bhakti, these are the things that feed Krishna consciousness. They nourish Krishna consciousness. When there is no Krishna, what is Krishna consciousness? Krishna consciousness is Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav, the mellow of devotion to Krishna. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavamati. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. This is Rupa Goswami shloka from Padyavali, describing intense aspiration for Krishna consciousness. And he defines what Krishna consciousness is. This is the Sanskrit term that Srila Prabhupada coined the phrase Krishna consciousness from. I don't know if it was used before by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, if he used that phrase, Krishna consciousness. But Srila Prabhupada, in two places, does mention that this is where this Krishna consciousness comes from. Krishna consciousness, the English term Krishna consciousness, comes from Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhavitamati. So that is what Krishna consciousness is. Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav is Krishna consciousness. Those things that cultivate Krishna consciousness, those are the primary limbs of bhakti. Hearing, chanting, remembering. They directly nourish and actively cultivate one's Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav. When one starts Krishna consciousness, in the very beginning of Krishna consciousness, there is very little Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav. Because that affection for Krishna, one's attraction for Krishna, is very undeveloped. Naturally, because it's at the beginning. That's a very natural. So, but Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhava is eternal. It exists eternally in Krishna's eternal associates. They are always Krishna conscious. They are always Krishna conscious. Krishna's eternal associates are always in Krishna consciousness. They are they are what Krishna consciousness is. They are Krishna consciousness, the eternal associates of Krishna. And every eternal associate of Krishna, whether it be a Nitya Siddha Jiva Tattva eternal associate of Krishna, whether it be a Nitya Siddha Shakti Tattva eternal associate of Krishna, whether it be Krishna's expansion, who is in Krishna consciousness, they're all in Krishna consciousness and they're all serving Krishna in their own completely unique way, like no other. They all have their own completely unique form of Krishna consciousness, Krishna, unique love for Krishna, unique way of pleasing Krishna that no one else can do it quite like them. So they're all so dear to Krishna because Krishna is relishing their love that only they can give him. And only he can only enjoy that because only they have it. So similarly, when we come in contact with Krishna consciousness, which means to come in contact with someone who has Krishna consciousness. Who has Krishna consciousness? The eternal associates of Krishna. They come into material creation, they manifest within the realm of material creation by Krishna's internal potency, Atmamaya, and display pastimes with Krishna to attract us, to display real life, real existence. The real form of existence is displayed in Krishna's Leela for our benefit. Actually, primarily for the benefit of those who have some Krishna consciousness. Paritranaya sadhuna. Krishna manifests his Leela. Krishna sends his eternal associates primarily for his devotees, means the sadhakas in the material world. And the devotees are very merciful. Devotees are considered more merciful than Krishna, so they want to give Krishna consciousness to others. Bhakti sanjayate bhakti. Bhakti comes from bhakti. The bhaktas want to give bhakti. Krishna wants to relish love with his devotees. The bhaktas want to share that, give others the opportunity to connect with Krishna. So they give bhakti, they share Krishna consciousness. And that becomes by their endeavor to share Krishna consciousness, we condition jivas come in contact with bhakti and develop an appreciation, become attracted. We become attracted to the devotee, we become attracted to Krishna. That attraction builds to the point of pure faith, where I just want to please Krishna. That's all I want to do. Everything else in my life is molded around ultimately pleasing Krishna. So, Krishna Bhakti Koile Sarva Karma Krita Hoy. That everything, Sarva Karma, all activities, Krishna Bhakti, are for pleasing Krishna. So, that Shraddha, through engaging in the primary angas of Bhakti, not the supportive angas of Bhakti. The supportive angas of Bhakti support the primary aspects of Bhakti, but don't take them to be in of themselves the most important thing. However you do eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, whichever ashram you do it in, whichever form it takes in your life, it's always secondary to our practice of Bhakti, to our primary engagement in Bhakti, Sankirtan. Hearing, chanting, Navanga Bhakti. Everything else supports those things. Those things can change. Those things can, whatever is favorable according to the current circumstances is what should be done to support Bhakti. They are not in of themselves Bhakti. When they are connected, Sangha, then they become Bhakti. Sangha Swarup Anga Bhakti. This is all Jiva Goswami terminology for differentiating between the primary aspects of Bhakti, Swarup, Anga Bhakti, and those actions that support it, that are connected to it. Sangha Siddha. Because they support a devotee's Bhakti, because they're connected, Prabhupada has the term dovetailed. because they're connected like a carpentry joint, where it's a form of carpentry joint that has this, like the tail of a dove, and there's two pieces of wood, and they've all got these dovetail shapes, and you put them together and it becomes very strong, just like one piece of wood, because of its joins together so well for a dovetail join. So when the Dharma activities, or any activity which is supporting bhakti, is dovetailed with bhakti, then it's considered bhakti. But still, we should know what Krishna consciousness is, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav. That's what we're trying to cultivate. And the primary the primary actions that do that are primary actions of bhakti. And everything else that we do is to support that. So this is the place of Dharma in the life of a devotee. It's supportive. I was reading Bhakti Churu Maharaj's Ocean of Mercy, which is a description of his time with Srila Prabhupada in 1970, end of 76 through to 77. And there Srila Prabhupada towards the end in 1977 was talking about the need to establish Varanashram, and particularly for the sake of setting an example as an aspect of preaching, to set an example, a standard for everyone to follow in society, and for the benefit as preaching. So he was emphasizing it from that perspective. And my spiritual master, His Holiness Srila Shiva Ram Swami Maharaj, he often says how there are endeavors in ISKCON Hungary to set up Varanashram is very much for benefit of preaching. It's a form of preaching, to set an example, to show the world, to show others. And my experience is that it's the primary angas of bhakti that nourish our Krishna consciousness the most. Sometimes we can become, because as conditioned souls we identify with the externals primarily. Because internal Krishna consciousness, Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav, is undeveloped. So therefore, naturally, we identify more with external things and think that when this external thing is sorted, when I'm functioning according to my nature, my ever-changing nature, which is just a ever-changing thing, because the body is always changing, the karmic influence is always changing, the ongoing development of one's relationship with Krishna is always changing. Then once I've got this external thing, that external thing sorted, then I'll be able to be more Krishna conscious. Then I'll be able to be more well situated. Then I'll be able to be more something. But actually, it's the primary actions of bhakti that are going to make us more well situated in Krishna consciousness. Our japa, our kirtan, our study of Shastra, our hearing of Shastra, our worshipping the deity, the primary actions of bhakti. These are the things that really sustain and develop our Krishna consciousness, and that we need to cultivate. So, Prithu Maharaj is stating here that everything is dependent on Krishna. Everything is dependent on Krishna. So it's true across the spectrum, whether it's conditioned souls who are not directly engaged with Krishna, as in Brajendra Nandan, Yashoda Nandan, Krishna, but who are functioning under the influence of Prakriti alone, whose actions are being sanctioned by Paramatma, samasaveshu bhuteshu, without any real bias one way or the other, from a neutral perspective, sanctioning of the fulfillment of the conditioned soul's desires. Still, ultimately, it's all dependent on Krishna. So unless it's sanctioned, unless Paramatma gives sanction, it won't happen for a conditioned soul. And for sadhakas, for jivas who have surrendered to Krishna, taken shelter of Krishna, Sakvid Eva Prapanayas, from this day on, I am going to dedicate myself to you. Krishna's involved directly. Aham Yaham, he's carrying. No longer is it just Prakriti, sanctioned by Paramatma. It's Krishna's personal involvement in the life of a devotee. That's not the same. So therefore, sadhaka considered liberated. Why? Not necessarily that they're at bhava or beyond in a transcendental state, but that Krishna is directly involved. It's no longer just Prakriti. It's no longer just Paramatma sanctioning. It's Krishna involved in a person's life, giving what he feels is due according to what is going to benefit that person the most. Always. It's all good, all loving at all times. So whatever is going to benefit that devotee the most, according to that individual person's circumstances, it's all completely customized, completely individualized to the needs of the individual person. Nothing in the way that Krishna reciprocates with his devotees is anything other than completely personal and loving. So for sadhakas, it's not the same. It's Krishna. And Krishna will give exactly what is due. Not one iota less, not one iota more. So you can't change it. Why the sincere devotee doesn't want to. Whatever Krishna wants to give me. I know I'm due a lot. Still, he's so merciful. He's only giving a little bit. I'm not going to change my service. I'm not going to move around here and there or blame this external thing or that external thing. I'm not going to blame anyone. Because I know that it's all I'm getting what I'm due according to what I'm due, according to what Krishna's giving. Can't change it. Oh, I'm not going to do this because I might suffer. So I'll compromise in one area. I'll compromise in my Krishna consciousness, and I'll do this to avoid that. It will come in another way. I don't want to get this virus. It will come another way anyway. If you're due something that Krishna wants you to get, it's coming. It's going to come one way or the other. Can't change it. It takes this form or that form. If Krishna feels it's due, if Krishna feels that that is what the devotee needs, it's going to come. Hare Krishna, Rakhe, Rakhe Krishna, Hare. Krishna wants to kill you, no one can save you. Krishna wants to save you, no one can kill you. So what is due in terms of good and bad karma, that's in Krishna's hands. He's giving according to what he sees fit, both suffering and material enjoyment. Material enjoyment and suffering, not just the suffering, but all. It's all Krishna karma. Any state of external material distress, any state of external material happiness, only getting what Krishna gives. The devotee is grateful for both. It's all Krishna's mercy. And actually, I just want to serve Krishna. Actually, I just want to cultivate Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhava. I just want to cultivate my relationship with Krishna. Oh, when will I be attracted to Krishna? When will I be attracted to Krishna in the way that he wants me to serve him forever? When will that relationship be awakened in my heart, be cultivated in my heart? How long will I continue to aspire for that which is unattainable within the material realm, rather than turning to the reality, turning to Krishna, the interactions between Krishna and his eternal associates, real life, the real form of existence, which is there in the spiritual world, our actual home. We're all homeless. We're all in a desolate, lonely state of existence, immaterial existence, separate from Krishna. That cavity in the heart will never be satisfied by anything in the material world. It will only be satisfied in our relationship with Krishna. There's no aspect of the self that can be satisfied outside of our relationship with Krishna, ultimately. And the false hope that, somewhere there is just pipe dream. It's actually only in our relationship with Krishna. So then let everything remind us of that. Let that mood of being separated from Krishna, let all of our experience in the material world feed our state of separation from Krishna, feed our aspiration for Krishna's service, feed our aspiration to be united with Krishna in a loving relationship. Those are healthy desires. The self is there always, but let me please Krishna. How does Krishna want to be pleased? Let me serve in a way which pleases Krishna. So the cultivation of the aspiration for Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhadita is Krishna consciousness. That is sadhana. Sadhana, that is the substance of sadhana. The practices of withdrawing the mind, bringing the mind back, any external thing, whether it be of the body and mind, to connect with Krishna, are those actions which are favorable to Krishna consciousness. When we're cultivating our consciousness of Krishna, that is the substance of bhakti. So we want to stay connected with the substance. So because Prithu Maharaj wants to connect his citizens and facilitate the Vaishnavas with being connected with Krishna, with the substance, then he is reminding that everything is dependent on Krishna. And let everything ultimately remind you of Krishna. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that the existence of God is proved by the experience of wise persons. This is Banuswami translating a line in his Vishwanath's commentary. The existence of God is proved by the experience of wise persons. Nityasiddha associates of Krishna, they experience Krishna. They don't believe in it. They experience Krishna. So, Tribhuvanath Prabhu, he would say that when you would sit in Srila Prabhupada's presence and he would talk about Krishna, he'd talk about being in Bury Place, how there was a small group of devotees, and Prabhupada would talk about Krishna, talk about Krishna's pastimes. Tribhuvanath said that it was like you could almost feel everyone in the room that Prabhupada was talking about Krishna and his associate. Felt like you could almost just touch them, like they were so close. So Tribhuvanath would say that Prabhupada was sharing his experience, and by hearing, you're brought into that experience. That reality is absolute, it's always present. By hearing, you connect with it. Shravana dasha, by absorption through hearing. We connect with that absolute reality through hearing and come into the experience of it. So we want to associate with those persons. We want to, and where do we access that? Like Sanatana Goswami was saying, let my life be Srimad Bhagavatam. Because in Bhagavatam we have that opportunity to associate with those who are experiencing Krishna. And that experience will rub off. Some of their Krishna Bhakti Rasa Bhav rubs off onto us. And we become inspired. We become attracted. We become brought into that through our aspiration. The cultivation of that is the substance. So Prithu Maharaj is upholding Dharma for its purpose. And in the next verse, he really kind of, well, in the next verse, he starts to talk about the symptoms of connecting with the substance. He says, by the inclination to serve the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, suffering humanity can immediately cleanse. So by contacting the substance, Krishna consciousness, this is the first impact, cleansing. Describes it as being like the Ganges, which emanates from the toes of the lotus feet of the Lord. Such a process immediately cleanses the mind, and thus spiritual or Krishna consciousness gradually increases. And then in the following verse 32, when a devotee takes shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is completely cleansed of all misunderstanding. This is only possible by practicing Bhakti Yoga. In such a state, one never comes back to the material world. So in text 30, we're being reminded of the importance of understanding Krishna as the sanctioner and as the only one who's by which everything is going on, and that we should connect with him. And this is the real purpose of Dharma. Okay, thank you very much for your kind attention on this Sunday morning. And does anyone have any comments or questions? Yes. There's two Prabhus kind of in the same direction, put their hand up at the same time. So I'll go for Prabhu at the back first. Yeah. Mm. Yeah. I think that it's still best to cultivate that understanding that everything is going on by Krishna's arrangement, and you're not being naive. That's the actual absolute reality. How could you be experiencing it if it wasn't by Krishna's sanction? So therefore we try and take a humble mood. It's always the best path. There's never any loss from taking the humble path. Never any loss. Never lose out, actually, because because in a humble mood, one can always feel connected to Krishna. One can always feel Krishna's presence. One can feel sheltered by Krishna. One doesn't lose one's connection with Krishna. So, but like with anything, we never take anything out of context. So this is emphasizing one point in a huge framework of our philosophy and understanding and culture, and so of course, what it means to simple. I could give a simple example. If you sat too close to the stove or fire, you're going to get burned. Oh, I'm experiencing this by Krishna's arrangement. I'm just experiencing this. This is like all sanctioned by Krishna. Yeah, but you can also just move over there and not get burned. That's so it doesn't mean that it's not the only factor, but it's the ultimate factor, right? So yeah, we take it all into consideration. It's all about what's favorable to my service. That's what it boils down to. What's favorable to my service? That's the guiding principle. What's favorable to following the instructions of my spiritual master, which means what's favorable to performing my service. So I do that. Now, in my endeavor to always try and act in a way which is favorable to my service, I accept what comes as Krishna's arrangement. I accept what comes as Krishna's mercy. I acted in this way. I tried to do it. I tried to act in a way which was favorable to my service. This is what I experienced. To the best of my ability, I made all endeavor to understand what was favorable. Then I accept that this is what. And if I know in my heart I haven't done everything that is favorable for my service, and I'm experiencing, then I also know the reason for that. That's humility. That's honesty. That's also Krishna. So, but that's the line. What's favorable? What's pleasing to Krishna? What's favorable to my service? That's like the benchmark to gauge. Does that help? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Right. Yeah. Nonsense. When I hear that, I'm like, yeah. Unfortunately, the person must have performed some action which made them do some suffering. That action was nonsense. Otherwise, they wouldn't be getting suffering. And suffering comes. Is that how you take it? Mm. Yeah. 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 Krishna is reciprocating with us constantly. Our, what we're doing, our misdoings and our proper doings. We're getting the experience accordingly. Mm. Right. Prabhu? Mm. Yeah, good question. Um, yeah, it's just do whatever you have to do to maintain yourself. It's just struggle for existence, survival. So you're doing whatever you have to do to maintain your existence. You're maintaining your existence so that you can do sadhana, so that you can do service. Then that maintaining of your existence is favorable. If you're doing activities in of themselves, trying to find some fulfillment, personal fulfillment in the activity itself. So you're not doing it as service or to support your service. Then that becomes a mixed realm of you know. So steadiness is everything is just done to please Krishna. And until steadiness, then it's all a bit mixed. Faith is mixed and everything is a little bit mixed. But the overall general drive is, I want to please Krishna, I want to do bhakti. And by that overall general drive in Krishna consciousness, then gradually through continued contact with primary bhakti, hearing, chanting, remembering, service, then anything that's in the heart which is selfish will gradually just become disgusting, more and more disgusting, to the point that why would I want to put my mind or intelligence or anything into something which is disgusting when there's all this nectar at Radha Giridhari's lotus feet? Why not just put my mind and intelligence there? Pretty much anything that a devotee does in terms of material occupation, pretty much anything is in Kali Yuga is going to have some level of contamination, and there's no perfection in material external occupational activities. There's nothing perfect. There's nothing that's totally. It's always Kali Yuga. So there's always something in it that's not right. You know, and to minimize that, the better. You know, like so. The least illicit sex, meat eating, gambling, right, intoxication that is present, the better. But ultimately, it will all have some connection with something contaminated in it. But the devotee should take solace in Lord Chaitanya's instructions to the Kurma Brahmana. Kabunavadi Vetoma Vishaya Taranga Punarapi Tabi Padimora Sangha. He says that even your materialistic activities at home, they will not obstruct your connection with me if you do these things. Yari Dekatarika Krishna Upadesh Amara Gaya Guru Hana Tara Idesh. So if you always engage in my service, that's the first verse, Yari Deka. And then he says, Kabuna Vadibe Toma Vish. He says, if you're, so we try and focus on Yari Deka Tarika Krishna Upadesh, following Krishna's instructions, cultivating Krishna consciousness, giving Krishna consciousness to others. That's what our life is really about. How much of our time do we do that in a Grihastha ashram? I don't know, 10%, 15%, a couple of hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the evening, weekends. Yeah. But even all of that material activity, Mahaprabhu says that when it's done in this way, then it won't be an obstruction. And he says that he'll always be with you. Yeah. So yeah. So we cultivate those things that way. How do we know? When our taste for hearing and chanting is going down. When our desire to remember Krishna. How do we know? Well, what do you want to do with your time? What do you want to do with your time? Means every moment. What do you want to do with your consciousness? Right? Do you want to cultivate remembrance of Krishna and those activities that feed that? If that desire is going up, then it's all good. If that desire is going down or being interrupted, then that means there's something that we need to look at in our hearing and chanting. But generally, it's in our hearing and chanting that we need to look, not in the material activities that's supporting the hearing and chanting. They're just duties. We just get them done. We just do them. And the more you get taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna, the least tasty those things will be. So therefore smarana, therefore Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam. There's no obstruction in remembering Krishna, actually. That's just down to what we want. That's down to our taste. That's down to what we're nourishing in our heart. Yeah. So that's the litmus test, taste for hearing and chanting. Yeah. So when it comes time to read, Oh, it's late. I've had a late, la, la, la. Well, that's not the time really, but it is as well. Why not all the time? Why not all the time? What do I want to do with my spare time? What I want to, so taste is the litmus. Where's my taste? Yeah. So Jiva Goswami says, regulate it, and then the taste can grow in a regulated fashion. Yeah. We can't have an experience beyond our bhakti. Anatta Nivritti Bhakti doesn't give the experience of Bhava Bhakti Bhakti. Can't expect the symptoms of Bhava in Anishtita Bhajana Kriya. The results of the activity correspond to the activity. So, but we should know where we are, where we go. We should be cultivating our taste, and that should be increasing. All right, it's getting quite late. Any other? No, I think we'll finish there. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Go Premanandi.